In 2008, Fallout 3 came out, and game journalists of the time showered glowing praise on the cinematic VATS mechanic, which makes the game a one-sided turkey shoot by freezing enemies in place and piling enormous one-sided and unfair advantages on the player. For most players and journalists of the time, this was their first Fallout experience, and so they went into the game with no preconceived expectations on what the game ought to be. So most were not disappointed by what it was. However, that is not the full story, because there were millions of people who had played the original Fallouts that came out in the late 90s. And many of these players were disappointed by the removal of traits, the bad writing, recycling of ideas from the original Fallouts without adding much of its own. The outrageous treatment of a beloved Fallout icon, and all-around dumbing down of the gameplay and story to a level that made the game seem like it was designed by a fifth grader. Many now claim that criticism of Fallout 3 did not exist back when the game came out. They lie and attempt to gaslight with their historical revisionist claims that criticisms of Fallout 3 did not start until after New Vegas came out, but nothing could be further from the truth. It is indeed very hard to dig up contemporary comments and reviews from over a decade ago, because websites come and go, and even stuff that doesn't disappear tends to get buried under mountains of newer stuff. It is very much like trying to find a needle in a haystack. However, these criticisms can still be found if you know where to look. No Mutants Allowed, for instance, is a great record of contemporary criticisms. This website existed since the very beginning of the Fallout franchise. I hope that it will always exist. They are the real, true fans of Fallout. They were in the trenches long before most Fallout fans nowadays were even born. Fast forward about 8 years or so, and a controversial Fallout 3 review titled "Fallout 3 is Garbage, and Here's Why" came out. This video, I'd say, is probably the best critique on Fallout 3 that's been made thus far. The only downsides of that video are a couple unnecessary screams which rupture the eardrums of headphone users. And I would have liked him to have gone in more detail on a few things, such as the morality issues. I feel not enough was said about the various side quests, and DLC wasn't even covered at all, aside from the one DLC he owned, which is understandable. But aside from those minor complaints, his video was near perfect, as Mr. Matty Plays might say. But you know how it is when someone speaks an inconvenient truth. That video rustled a lot of jimmies, to say the least. And you can see that in the like-dislike ratio. But nevertheless, facts are facts, and the points that were made in that video in 2016 are still just as valid today.
New Vegas is, to my mind, the weakest Fallout. I honestly don't know what more people want.
Among the many jimmies that were rustled by H-Bomb's video were the jimmies of a somewhat substantial Bethesda YouTuber by the name of ManyATrueNerd, whom I will be referring to as MATN for the sake of brevity from here on out. MATN made a video a couple years ago titled "Fallout 3 is Better Than You Think." Even the very title of this video is offensive because it implies that people who don't like Fallout 3 are stupid. The title implies that Fallout 3 is better than you think, that it is better than you can comprehend. This, however, is the exact opposite of the truth. Very little thinking went into the writing of Fallout 3, though it may have an ocean of content. It is as shallow as a mud puddle. This was covered quite well in a number of videos over the years, including H-Bomb's controversial review. MATN's video mentions H-Bomb's video, but ignores many of the points H-Bomb made, and the few points which MATN actually does respond to are done in bad faith, using disingenuous mental gymnastics, strawman tactics, and other sorts of logical fallacies just to make it seem like he's won the argument, though in reality he has not. H-Bomber Guy definitely should respond to MATN's video and tear him a new one. So far, this has yet to happen, but in his review of Pathologic, H-Bomb mentioned MATN's video at one point, and it was strongly implied that he will make a response.
God, I should really make that vampire video I teased years ago. It's on the pile somewhere. Hey, you, what are you doing out of your cage? I'll get to you!
I do not know when that will happen, but in the meantime, I decided that I will do my own response. I had planned to do this for a long time, but as many of you may know, I lost the previous channel that I had and became embroiled in some internet drama and various other sorts of bullshit which caused me to lose focus from what I wanted to do. I would also like to point out that another YouTuber by the name of Creetosis has already made a very long and in-depth response of his own. It is very well done, so I thought I would give a mention to him. His video is over 6 hours long, which has me nervous about how long my own video will be. MATN is aware of Creetosis' response and posted a reply of sorts on Reddit. In his reply, MATN slandered Creetosis, saying his brand is, quote, aggressive negativity, and so on, while at the same time refusing to respond to his video and claiming he only skimmed through it. Long story short, MATN is too much of a coward to respond. He has forfeited. If he's already thrown in the towel when it comes to a small YouTuber, what chance does he have when H-Bomb's response comes out? If MATN thinks Creetosis' brand is aggressive negativity, then I'm curious what he will think of my brand.
Wait till they get a load of me.
And what exactly is MATN's brand? I say it is passive-aggressive negativity. In his video, MATN was very negative towards New Vegas.
And that's when the solution hit me. New Vegas can't have huge sprawling dungeons because it doesn't have enough stuff to reward you with at the end. They're just sort of there. Linnaeus is literally some guy who we've never met before the final confrontation. All we know is some vague stories about how mean he is. New Vegas is, to my mind, the weakest Fallout game.
But he was very passive-aggressive about it. But it is still negativity nonetheless. I do not care if he likes Fallout 3. If anyone claims that I'm mad because of him liking Fallout 3, they're wrong. My problem is that he threw New Vegas under the bus numerous times throughout the video in order to defend Fallout 3, instead of simply praising Fallout 3 on its own merits. I think it is actually quite telling that in order to defend Fallout 3, someone has to slander New Vegas in order to do it. If Fallout 3 were really as great as MATN would have his viewers believe, he would be able to praise the game on its own merits rather than trash-talking another game in order to do so. Passive-aggressive negativity is still negativity. But what is really strange about MATN bashing New Vegas in that video is that when you look at his channel and the sorts of Fallout content he produces, there is disproportionately far more New Vegas content than there is Fallout 3 content. How do you explain this apparent contradiction? This comment someone left on one of Creetosis' videos seems to have hit the nail right on the head. Now, I've already discussed this in a previous video, so I'm not going to go into it again too much, but I found this comment to be very insightful, and it certainly does seem that MATN was being disingenuous with his praise of Fallout 3, considering that he hadn't even played Fallout 3 for a full 2 years prior to when he made that video. And, as that comment noted, the video came out less than a month before E3 2018. Let's not forget that this was the year that Fallout 76 came out. There was the infamous Greenbrier event in October where Bethesda cherry-picked their biggest ass-kissers in the YouTube community and invited them to West Virginia to play Fallout 76 before the game was officially released. The official, politically correct term used to refer to these cherry-picked ass-kissing YouTubers is influencers. But in reality, what they really are is marketers. On October 25th, 2018, MATN tweeted to Oxhorn, "You know, me and you should probably talk at some point. Maybe a nice holiday. I hear West Virginia is lovely this time of year." Oxhorn did not respond. He may have misunderstood the meaning of the tweet. MATN, using words like lovely, probably made Oxhorn very uncomfortable. He might have interpreted the tweet as MATN hitting on him. You see, as recently as 2017 or so, Oxhorn reacted negatively in one of his videos towards Arcade Gannon being gay. He has, of course, edited that out of the video, and 2017 was a couple years ago, right? So, his views might have changed since then. It just seems like a very interesting coincidence that his views on homosexuality would abruptly change right around the same time he started to become a huge YouTuber. But who knows? Coincidences like that can happen, I suppose. And he also wrote some controversial blogs back in the 2000s where he advocated open discrimination against gay people, saying they should be thrown out on the streets, among other things. Seems a bit harsh to me, but what do I know? I'm just some nobody who didn't get invited to the Greenbrier event. Anyway, the point is, there was this Greenbrier conference, and MATN and Oxhorn and a few other pro-Bethesda YouTubers were cherry-picked and given invitations. Bethesda paid for their transportation and lodging and so on, but these invitations were all sent out months prior. How much Bethesda ass-kissing did it take for these influencers to get an invitation to that event? Mr. Matty Plays kissed Bethesda's ass by praising Fallout 4 as near perfect and saying it is disrespectful to criticize it. Oxhorn called people who criticize Fallout 4 toxic and said they should be blocked out of your life, as well as slandering Obsidian at every turn. I don't know enough about Juicehead and the other influencers to know what sort of ass-kissing they did to get an invitation, but I'm sure they did their share as well. And what did MATN do to get his golden ticket to the Todd Howard Chocolate Factory? He made this video praising Fallout 3 and shitting all over New Vegas. It has been over a decade since I've played Fallout 3 back when it came out. I 100% completed it and got the Platinum Trophy on the PS3. The game wasn't all bad. It had some moments I liked here and there, like kernels of corn in a log of shit, but I've never had any desire to play the game since then. New Vegas, on the other hand, I've played and replayed more times than I can count. On quick glance, one might think both games are the same, just with a slightly different setting, but if you look a little bit deeper, you'll see the differences are like night and day. Fallout 3 on the PS3 wasn't great, but at least it worked. Kinda. But I can't record from the PS3, so I have to use the Steam version. Todd, help me.
All of this just works. All of this just works. All of this just works.
No it doesn't, Todd. It doesn't just work. The game has been on Steam since 2009, and a number of versions of Windows have come and gone since then, but Bethesda has kicked their consumers to the curb and have refused to put forth the trivial effort it would take to update the Steam version of Fallout 3 to something that actually
just works.
I don't believe that Bethesda relies upon modders to fix their game for them.
Shut up, Oxhorn. They absolutely do rely on modders. Well, I guess in a sense, you're right. Bethesda doesn't rely on modders. Bethesda couldn't give less of a shit. It's not Bethesda who relies on modders to fix their broken games. It's the players who do. Thankfully, there's a very helpful guide on the Steam community by someone by the name of Benoit that guides new players through the elaborate process of getting the game to work on modern Windows. So we finally get the game up and running, and then we get to enjoy the open world experience of being locked up inside a sealed vault from the moment of literal birth until we're 19 years old, in an unnecessarily long and pointlessly boring mandatory vault intro sequence. Yay.
That's a good name, don't you think? Fits you perfectly.
For some people, if you liked New Vegas, you also had to dislike Fallout 3. You weren't a true Fallout fan unless you thought Fallout 3 was garbage, Bethesda were trash, and Todd Howard was your sworn nemesis.
You are ignoring the fact that many people who dislike Fallout 3 are not completely 100% negative on it. Even if you don't admit it, it is an open secret that your video mainly exists as a response to H-Bomber Guy's video. Although that is the case, you are very selective on what you choose to respond to or even acknowledge from his video. H-Bomb started off by actually praising some of the things he liked from Fallout 3. He said he liked VATS and being able to shoot a gun out of someone's hands. He liked the talking medic power armor. He said he liked Moira and how her long and varied quest gave her character something close to depth. And I agree. I also like Moira and how quirky she is. But the funny thing is that a lot of the people who like Fallout 3 tend to hate Moira for some reason. So go figure. I thought some of the side quests in the game were alright. And in particular, I did like the Arafu quest with the vampires when I played it over a decade ago. At the time, I thought vampires were cool. Maybe not so much anymore. I also liked the Big Trouble in Big Town quest. It is similar to Ghost Town Gunfight in New Vegas, which I also liked. Both of these quests remind me of the movie Seven Samurai. These quests made me feel like a real hero, and not a fake hero like the hero of Kvatch, but an actual hero, like Martin or James. So yes, I did like some of the side content of Fallout 3. The main quest of Fallout 3 sucked, though. But Bethesda is a studio full of hundreds of people. Some of those people are more talented than others, so you end up with a mixed bag when it comes to the content in the games. It all depends on who worked on what. Unfortunately, the lead writer of Fallout 3 was Emil Pagliarulo. I'm not impressed with a single thing that he's ever done. He was also the lead writer of Oblivion and Fallout 4. Again, I'm not impressed with the quality of his work in any way whatsoever. He seems to be obsessed with the notion of the player not being the actual main protagonist, but rather someone who follows in their footsteps. Whether it be Martin Septim in Oblivion or James in Fallout 3. And in either game, this real main protagonist, whom the player has no control over, makes a noble sacrifice by committing suicide. It is because of things like this that Fallout 3 has been compared to Oblivion with guns, rather than an actual Fallout game. That doesn't necessarily mean Fallout 3 is garbage, assuming you happen to like Oblivion, but I personally don't care for it. But that's the main plot. As I said, some of the side content can be alright at times. Whenever I come across some decent side content in Fallout 3, I just assume that it was someone other than Emil who wrote that, and I think whoever that person is should have been the lead writer instead of him. But it is what it is. So, Fallout 3 does have some decent bits. I struggle to find them, but I acknowledge they exist, and so did H-Bomb in his video. MATN conveniently ignores this. He claims Fallout 3 critics think Todd Howard is their sworn nemesis. I don't have anything against Todd other than the fact he likes to tell lies. But he's a leprechaun, and leprechauns lie because they don't want people to know where their pot of gold is hidden. Lying isn't cool, but as far as I know, that's the worst thing to say about him. But aside from the lying, I don't really have anything against the man. I assume Todd just spends most of his time smoking pot and eating Doritos and letting the rest of the studio do whatever they like. That might work out fine if the studio had great writers, but instead they have Emil. I don't blame Todd for the bad writing, because Todd isn't a writer, but he is the director of the studio, so ultimately the buck stops with him. And yes, there is an even greater and more corrupt evil running the parent company of ZeniMax. Let's not forget the nylon bag fiasco and all the other shady practices which Bethesda has done and is continuing to do. That shouldn't be ignored, but that isn't the topic of this video. Anyway, my aim is not to be negative, just for negativity's sake. I'm just being honest. You should try it sometime, MATN. You don't seem to understand that your audience is consumers. Being a large YouTuber, you get review copies of games free of charge, whereas normies have to pay. And you get invited to these Greenbrier events, and so on and so forth. You have to admit that you are biased. Even if you're not being paid by Bethesda, which you could be for all I know, you are nevertheless receiving free stuff from them. And this free stuff is not unconditional. They can stop giving it to you at any time for any reason. They give you this free stuff with a tacit expectation that you will mindlessly praise them. But they can cut it off at any time. And you know that the best way of ensuring this free stuff keeps on coming is by kissing their ass. And that's why you made the video. You made a 2-hour video defending a game you hadn't touched at all for 2 years prior. I found an interesting tweet from MATN a couple years ago to H-Bomber Guy. In this tweet, MATN says, "The best thing about Fallout 4 is that it makes Fallout 3 look better." I suppose one could interpret that tweet a number of different ways, but to me, it seems like MATN is implying that neither Fallout 3 nor Fallout 4 are all that great. But his argument here seems to be that Fallout 4 is worse, so that makes Fallout 3 seem better in comparison. This makes MATN seem disingenuous when he claims that Fallout 3 is better than you think. It doesn't seem like he actually believes that himself. Combine that together with the fact he hadn't played Fallout 3 for 2 years before he made that video, and the fact he plays New Vegas far more often on his channel. The gist of the tweet is both Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 are bad, but Fallout 4 is worse, so that somehow makes Fallout 3 better. This tweet in question is in response to a tweet by HBomberGuy about his plans to respond to MATN in an inevitable Fallout 4 video. Soon after the success of his Fallout 3 video, MATN had tweeted that he was working on a Fallout 4 is better than you think. This was back in 2018, but it never happened. At first, I couldn't understand why he never made that video, but after seeing these tweets, then it hit me. He is waiting for HBomb to make his Fallout 4 video first. Then MATN can respond to that video and debunk that video using strawman tactics and other sorts of logical fallacies, the same way he debunked HBomb's Fallout 3 video. This tweet is very telling on what MATN really thinks of both Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. Who knows when his Fallout 4 video will come, but this tweet has already rendered his argument invalid before he's even made it. Never forget this tweet, and be sure to rub this in his face when he tries to tell you that Fallout 4 is better than you think, because this shows that he does not actually think that himself. Anyway, looks like I got a bit sidetracked there, but I just wanted to share that bit of info. But to briefly summarize, it is not the responsibility of consumers to praise a game or the company that made it. Don't let MATN, Oxhorn, or any of these influencers try to shame you into blindly praising something if you don't like it. You have every right not to like any game for any reason whatsoever. It doesn't make you toxic if you don't like something. Bethesda is not a charity. They're not handing out free games. Well, I guess they are to these influencers, but that's precisely why they are biased. You and I have to pay for these games. They don't. The games, Greenbrier invitations, and other free stuff are handed to these influencers on a silver platter. And even if Bethesda isn't directly paying them, they are making money off their exclusive access to these products and events. You can be damn sure of that. It is outrageous that these influencers shill for these big video game companies. And when consumers get screwed over and lied to with the nylon bags or whatever it might be, these same influencers either downplay it or they ignore it entirely because they know who butters their bread. But perhaps I'm being a bit too harsh on MATN. After all, it's not like he is saying it is disrespectful to criticize Bethesda like Mr. Matty Plays did.
This is one instance where I'm going to stand there and be like, if you didn't like Fallout 4, that's great. If you like Fallout 4, that's great. But to call it a bad game is honestly disrespectful.
Or saying it is unfair to criticize Bethesda like Oxhorn did.
I think that's unfair to Bethesda.
At least MATN didn't go that far.
And that's not fair.
Looks like I spoke too soon.
Now, I've spent a lot of time looking into this. I've watched feature-length videos and read forum posts the length of academic essays ahead of making this video.
And yet, when it came to Creetosis' response, the best you could manage was this shitty-ass Reddit post here, where you say you got 90 seconds in, and you say you skimmed through it, and you only list one thing, which you say sums it all up for you, and that is the Megaton Crater thing. Remember how you just said it was unfair that people criticize Fallout 3? Well, what are you doing here by dismissing Creetosis' response and not properly responding to it? That is being unfair. You cherry pick one thing. I don't believe for a second that you skimmed through it. I believe that you watched the whole entire video, and this was the only thing that you could come up with a response to, and you ignored everything else because you have no real argument. Now, as for the crater thing, I have to say that both you and Creetosis didn't fully do your homework, but I did, because, like I said, I replayed the game, and apparently you guys missed this, but if you talk to Manya, who is the wife of Nathan, she will tell you the history of the town and how it was founded. Apparently, the crater wasn't caused by the bomb falling, it was caused by a plane crash, which was carrying the bomb. That, too, is unrealistic, because even a plane crash wouldn't cause a crater of that magnitude. Realistically speaking, of course. Because, you see, planes are, by design, made as light as possible, usually with aluminum, or aluminium, as they say in your country. I think the only realistic way of explaining it is that the plane crash did cause a crater, but it was nowhere near as big as we see in the game. However, over the course of 200 years, the Megaton settlers probably dug out that crater a lot deeper than what it was to begin with, until it became what we see today. And the water at the bottom of the crater is most likely either rainwater that's collected there, or probably water from the leaking pipes. There's no evidence that this was groundwater. Anyway, that's just a partial response to the Megaton crater thing for me. I'll probably go into a bit more depth on it later, but the really funny thing to me is right here in this Reddit post. MATN writes, "Yeah, sorry, this is an example of a type of YouTube video I can't stand. A series of unconnected, sneering nitpicks that don't bother addressing the actual substantive, wider points in favor of digging for isolated counterexamples." You say digging for isolated counterexamples. Well, what the hell did you do when you dug for that Megaton crater thing? You say you skimmed through his video, and that was the only thing that you had any response to whatsoever.
Happy birthday!
So welcome to Growing Up Fast, the first area and mini-quest of Fallout 3. Technically it's the second, as you do get to play as a baby, but as that's literally just character build, and thus its equivalent in Fallout 1 was a menu, let's omit that.
Most players do omit that. H-Bomb pointed out in his video that the most popular mod for Fallout 3 is one that lets you mod the beginning out. Of course, opinions are subjective, but it does seem that the majority of players do not like the beginning of Fallout 3. Come to think of it, a lot of players do not like the ending either. It is only what comes between the opening and ending that has opinions divided as to whether that content is good or not. And those who do say it is good are people who tend to go around and do the side content and ignore the main quest for as long as possible. But starting the game from the moment of literal birth was completely unnecessary. Later on in the video, you talk about showing and not telling. Well, showing your character as an infant is something that doesn't need to be either told or shown. As H-Bomb said in his video, it is the bad joke answer to the question, where does our story begin? Thank God New Vegas doesn't do that with the courier. The only thing predefined about the courier is that he or she is a courier. And also, Ulysses claims that the courier made a delivery which caused the divide to blow up. Even that has no proof other than what Ulysses claims, but even if it's true, it doesn't really define the character of the courier. Even if Ulysses is correct, the circumstances behind that delivery aren't fully known even to him, and the player can deny involvement with it, or at least argue about the precise circumstances and context of whatever happened. The problem with this vault intro in Fallout 3 is that it leaves nothing to the imagination. In New Vegas, your character is an unwritten book, aside from being a courier at the time the game starts. That doesn't mean your character was always a courier. When you talk to the Lonesome Drifter, he mentions that he is from Montana. As a male courier, a dialogue option appears saying, "Wait, Montana? You wouldn't happen to be 17, would you?" Of course, this is an optional dialogue choice, but it implies that the courier may have had a connection with Montana in the past. The courier wasn't born a courier, and may not have been a courier his or her entire adult life. You could imagine the courier was pretty much anything in their past. Maybe they were a primitive tribal. Maybe they were a legion frumentari, like Ulysses. Perhaps they were a scavenger, like Easy Pete, or a farmer. Who knows? You can imagine them being pretty much anything you want. The courier's backstory is an unwritten book. But you can't say the same about the Lone Wanderer. Not only is the Lone Wanderer's book already written, but it's a fucking baby book. You say, let's omit that, and I agree. We should omit that. The problem is Bethesda did not omit that. As much as most players want to skip past it, it is still in the game regardless, and it railroads your character to being nothing more and nothing less than James' son or daughter. And unfortunately, Bethesda did the exact same sort of character railroading in Fallout 4. They seem to have learned nothing from their mistakes in Fallout 3 or from the better example of New Vegas, which shows how the main protagonist in a Fallout game should be done. But another thing about this baby sequence is that it does show players how to handle the basics of playing the game. For most players, this shouldn't be necessary unless it is literally the very first video game they've ever played in their entire lives. And if that is the case, then I genuinely feel sorry for them.
See, the first area you play in when you get control can actually be very interesting, because what the devs choose to tutorialize first shows us what they think the core gameplay elements are.
And what did the devs choose to tutorialize first that shows us what they think the core gameplay elements are? Well, I took some notes on what I've observed the core gameplay elements are. I could have made this list longer, but I felt that pretty much everything could be broadly covered under these 4 main points. Who's your daddy? The tutorial shows us that James is our daddy, both literally and figuratively, in the sense that it is our purpose to follow him wherever he goes, and that we are not the real main protagonist in the plot. He is. This is true in both the tutorial and the main quest. Eventually, he commits suicide, but then Madison Lee immediately straps on her dildo, bends us over, and then she becomes our daddy.
But even when your dad dies, you're not left to pick up the pieces and make things work for yourself. Dr. Lee immediately takes over and starts giving you the orders for where to go next.
We've got to evacuate now. Don't wander off, we're going to need you.
Jeez, Madison, you don't have to be rude, I'm standing right here.
Is it any wonder why Pinkerton left? Pinkerton's asshole was a lot less pink after Madison Lee was done with him. She became his daddy, and so he was forced to leave. And Madison Lee does the same thing to our character after James kills himself. James's suicide does seem a bit too contrived, if you ask me. Maybe the real reason for James killing himself is because he got tired of Madison Lee's aggressive, domineering attitude. Let's not forget, James left the project a long time ago and moved to the vault. Maybe the reason he left back then was because of Lee bossing him around. Then, 20 years later, he came back and Lee started pulling her crap all over again, so he killed himself. The Enclave gave him a convenient pretext that allowed him to look like a hero, but who knows. Either way, James offs himself. Then Madison Lee becomes our daddy.
Here she is convincing the Brotherhood to let you in.
Lions! I know you're in there! I know you can hear me! You open this goddamn door right now!
I guess I'm also here. I'm the player, but
And then, eventually, it's a giant robot and Sarah Lyons who proceed to bend us over and show us who's our daddy.
And then, when the time finally comes to take back the memorial and kick the Enclave out, who gives the triumphant speeches and leads the charge? Not you!
When we're done with this, everyone can have a nice cold glass of water on me.
We are never free of this. From the very beginning of the game to the very end, someone is always our daddy, bossing us around in everything we do. At least as far as the main plot is concerned. That's the reason why the side content is by far more well received, because in the case of the side content, we have some amount of freedom and independence. But not in the main story, we don't. There are even times where we are literally frozen in place and cannot move while cutscenes involving the real main characters play out. We are forced to watch these cutscenes play out exactly as Emil wrote them, and we aren't allowed to have any say in anything. This was a major point H-Bomb brought up in his video, but again, MATN simply ignored that. You must enjoy your birthday party. Enjoyment of your birthday party is non-negotiable. You want to go and explore the wasteland? Too bad. You have to enjoy your birthday party instead. $60 well spent. Am I right? It is impossible to either kill everything or kill nothing. Real main protagonists are unkillable. James and Amada can only be rendered unconscious. They are both essential to how the linear plot of the game plays out, and Bethesda does not allow the player to affect this in any way. Contrast this with New Vegas, where all characters are killable except children and a couple robots. Both kill everything and kill nothing playthroughs are impossible in Fallout 3. However, both are possible in New Vegas. Fallout 3 encourages over-the-top cartoon violence and murder, but at the same time blocks you from murdering any character that is crucial to the linear plot of the game. Somewhat paradoxically, you can't be a pacifist in Fallout 3 either. Putting aside for a moment the fact that a good at least 75% of Fallout 3's gameplay is combat, you are actually forced to kill the rad roach with the BB gun in the tutorial, because the game will not progress until you do. The gecko hunting tutorial with Sunny Smiles in New Vegas is optional, but killing the rad roach here in Fallout 3 is mandatory. In an old Reddit post, someone tried to do a pacifist playthrough of Fallout 3, but there's no way around killing that roach in the tutorial. To be fair, it is just a roach after all. It's not as bad as Fallout 4, where you are forced to kill Kellogg in order to proceed. Kellogg is a human being, and killing human beings is far worse than killing a roach. I hope everyone can agree on that, but that leads to the next lesson Fallout 3's tutorial teaches us. Human lives, except the leaders, are treated the same as rad roaches. This was a major point H-Bomb made in his video, and again, MATN completely ignored it. MATN says you can run away from the guards, and claims that this is a viable pacifist approach. But it isn't. I tested this out myself, and when I circled back around, I found that Officer Kindle had died from the rad roaches. His death might not directly be on my hands, but I could have saved his life had I intervened. It goes against the spirit of pacifism to allow others to die in order to save yourself. There is no way to talk him down or yield to him like you could do to guards in Oblivion. Even saving his life by killing the rad roaches that are attacking him doesn't make him stand down. It's ridiculous. This is supposed to be a human being, right? He is capable of speech and thought, and years earlier he attended your birthday party. Why in God's name can't he be talked to and reasoned with? No one expects the game to allow you to talk down the rad roaches. They are dumb insects that cannot speak or reason. Of course you couldn't talk them down. But shouldn't you be able to do that with the guards? Or at the very least make an attempt at it? Their orders from the Overseer are to apprehend you, not to kill you. That's why he says stop right there. But the game does not give you any option to comply with that order. And if you are not in control of your own character's actions, then how is this an RPG? MATN's suggestion that you can just run away is complete and utter horseshit. I recall an interview years ago where Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky talked about the original Fallout, and they said they designed quests to be solved either through combat, speech, or sneaking. That is why in Fallout 1, even though you can create your own character from scratch, the game offers 3 pre-designed vault dwellers in the form of Max Stone, Albert Cole, and Natalia Dubrovsky. These 3 are designed to be played in the manner of combat, speech, and stealth, respectively. But Fallout 3 shits all over this. Speech is not a relevant skill in that situation. Albert Cole would be completely and utterly useless. Natalia could just sneak past, but since the guard is distracted anyway, she doesn't even need to sneak, so her relevant skill is redundant. The only archetype which shines here is the combat archetype of Max Stone. That's how Bethesda designed Fallout 3. It is a combat game first and foremost. MATN says, what the devs choose to tutorialize first shows us what they think the core gameplay elements are, and the tutorial shows us that the answer is a linear corridor shooter. It's great the game is introducing us to this now, because we'll be spending the better part of the game later on doing the same linear corridor combat in the Metro DC tunnel system. Of all the characters in the tutorial that you can kill or allow to live, the only one which matters or has any implications whatsoever later on is that of the Overseer. Killing or saving anyone else only affects whether that character exists later on, but has no impact on anything other than their own existence. Only the Overseer matters. In theory, Amada and James would matter also, but the game doesn't allow you to kill them, so that theory is irrelevant. But what about Jonas? You can't even mention his death to James later on. He was supposed to be his best friend, but James doesn't care at all. He doesn't ask what happened to him, and he's never mentioned again. Like H-Bomb said in his video, far too many characters are just utterly disposable. It makes the entire game feel shallow as a mud puddle. The game devalues human life. The only lives we are told matter are the lives of the leaders who are calling the shots. We first learn this with the Overseer, but it happens again later on with Colonel Autumn. These lives matter, but the lives of Jonas and Officer Kendall do not. The illusion of choice. Bethesda provides many ways of solving a quest, and it is possible to inadvertently solve a quest before you even know it exists, and despite the myriad of solutions, they all result in the exact same outcome. I accidentally solved the quest of the tunnel snakes bullying Amada simply by talking to one of the tunnel snakes. It was not my intention to solve the quest, but it happened anyway. I was just talking to the dude. An old post on No Mutants Allowed tells of how someone accidentally solved the Power of the Atom quest just by walking up to the bomb and repairing it without even realizing it was a quest. I decided to test this out myself in an alternate save, and here's what happened. Well, that confirms it. If you have high enough skill, and you don't stop to talk to Lucas Sims or anyone else about the bomb first, it is entirely possible to make your way to the center of the town and disarm the weird bomb thing you find there and accidentally complete the Power of the Atom before you even know that it was a thing. Doing it accidentally like that also locks you out of doing it the other way, assuming that's what you wanted to do. I went up to Moriarty's saloon to check, and Mr. Burke wasn't there, so I never spoke with or interacted with him at all. But I assume if I were to continue playing on, he will probably be sending hit squads after me, and I'll never understand who this person is or why they are doing this. But then again, that's also the case even if you do blow up the town. Oh well. But an equally perplexing question is why hasn't anyone else disarmed the bomb in the 200 years since it's been there? Some 19-year-old kid wanders out of a vault 10 minutes ago, and they've never seen a bomb in their life, but they can instantly disarm it. Yet no one else could do the same thing in 200 years. What the fuck? And the same goes for blowing up the bomb. Why the fuck can't Mr. Burke do it himself? If he lacks the skill, then why doesn't he step outside Megaton and kill those mole rats behind the town and level his ass up? And then put the points into the relevant skill and then do it himself. Why is the player the only one that can do anything in this game? People in Megaton talk about how limited space in the town is, but there happens to be a spare house in the town, and when you disarm the bomb, Lucas Sims gives you a key and a deed to it. Seems like an excessive reward for accidentally completing a quest that you didn't even know was a thing until you've actually completed it. By the way, how does Lucas Sims know that I've successfully disarmed the bomb? If he doesn't know how to disarm it himself, then how could he possibly know that I've done it? Ah well, that is a very minor thing compared to the sheer stupidity of the quest as a whole. You have a number of choices in order to get the Overseer's password to escape the vault, the easiest being just grab it from the file cabinet right next to the computer. This requires no skill whatsoever, so no matter how you designed your character is completely irrelevant. Not only did Bethesda strip traits out of the game, but they made skills irrelevant in this tutorial also. No matter how you built your character in that baby book or in the GOAT test, the outcome is going to be exactly the same every time. Whether you pick a lock, hack a terminal, or just grab the password from the drawer, the outcome is exactly the same. There's no point in ever attempting this tutorial with different builds. Bethesda has made character builds in this game irrelevant. That's why real Fallout fans can confidently say that Fallout 3 is not a real Fallout game. It is Oblivion with guns. Not only does Fallout 3 fail as a Fallout game, it also fails as an RPG.
It's like how in Mass Effect 1...
No, it is nothing at all like Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1 starts you off as an adult and the captain of a ship.
It's actually quite slow to get to the gunplay. Instead, we start off by explaining scientific principles that underpin this world's technology, seeing that technology in action, meeting characters, engaging in conversation, learning about the universe.
And all of that sounds infinitely more intriguing than some pointless birthday party hijinks involving a sweet roll. Explaining scientific principles. When does Fallout 3 ever do that? Dr. Lesko's experiments destroyed the town of Greyditch and caused numerous deaths, including the death of Brian Wilkes' father, making the kid an orphan. There is blood on this scientist's hands, yet the game classifies him as a good karma character, so you lose karma for killing him, even though one could make a good argument that killing him is just because of the harm he has already caused and the potential that he will cause even more harm in the future from his experiments. But that, of course, is an issue of morality, which Fallout 3 tries to be the arbiter of. None of the characters in this game come across as being more intelligent than the people which made the game, which of course makes sense. The problem is, the people that made this game just aren't very intelligent, so their scientists don't come across as very brilliant either. This is the same studio that thinks DC would be a radioactive wasteland 200 years after the bombs fell, and somehow the bombs managed to salt the earth so that nothing would ever grow again, and the rain never falls. The bombs somehow made Maryland into a desert, though there's zero reason why that should be the case at all. Of course, it seems they've retconned this somewhat in Fallout 76 by explaining that DC has been nuked much more recently. But it is clear they were fine with shipping the game like this when they made it over a decade ago. Even with the 76 retcon, Three Dog still notes on the radio how no one in DC has seen a tree, even though only one state away, in neighboring West Virginia, there are verdant forests completely untouched by nuclear devastation. Anyway, getting way off topic here. Point is, Fallout 3 fails when it comes to scientific principles. And when does the tutorial even attempt to explain anything scientific at all? The tutorial shows you how to deal with some bullies, at best, but that's about it. The tutorial shows you what the mundane life inside of a vault is like. It doesn't do a whole lot to educate you on the outside world. At best, you do get some anecdotes from the entries in the Overseer's terminal on what's going on out there, but that's about it.
Because the Mass Effect team understood that what makes Mass Effect work isn't the gunplay, it's the universe and the characters that live within it.
That's great for Mass Effect. Too bad the makers of Mass Effect aren't the makers of Fallout 3. Ideally, Fallout 3 should have been made by the former team from Black Isle that worked on the original Fallouts, but barring that, BioWare also would have been able to make a competent go at it. At least the BioWare of that time. Certainly not BioWare as it stands right now. But unfortunately, neither Black Isle, Obsidian, or BioWare made Fallout 3. Bethesda did. Back around the time Fallout 3 came out, someone made this image. Again, this image proves that contemporary criticism of Fallout 3 did exist and was not a new phenomenon that only started because of H-Bomb's video. That is a lie. Perhaps my favorite part of this image is the part about the developers, showing the radically different philosophies that went into making their games. Tim Kaine said, "My idea is to explore more of the world and more of the ethics of a post-nuclear world, not to make a better plasma gun." And in contrast, you have Todd Howard's approach. Violence is funny. Let's all just own up to it. Violence done well is fucking hilarious. It's like Itchy and Scratchy, or Jackass. Now that's funny. H-Bomb nailed it fairly well near the end of his video when he shoots Colonel Autumn with a fork and the head explodes into disparate pieces of gore. This is what Bethesda chose to spend the time they had on. Also, over-the-top weapons like the Fat Man and the rocket launcher. By the way, remember the whole thing you brought up about the scientific principles? The rocket launcher goes against that by violating the laws of physics. But it is a fun weapon, and it's a video game. There's nothing inherently wrong with it being included. The point is just that this is what Bethesda chose to spend their time on, not the characters or the writing. As H-Bomb noted, Colonel Autumn stands for nothing, and he turns on a dime. This is especially bad, considering he's supposed to be the main antagonist of the entire game, but you can't even say what his motives are, and he is hardly unique in being poorly written. Most NPCs in the game are the exact same way. The Power of the Atom quest is another example of Todd's over-the-top, violence is funny, itchy and scratchy design approach. Tim Kaine wants to explore the ethics of a post-nuclear world. Todd just wants to blow stuff up. It is extremely contrived that an entire town would be set up around a bomb, and there would happen to be some suspicious-looking guy there waiting for the player to help them detonate that bomb, and there's no reason whatsoever for it other than just to watch the fireworks. Another good example is Gold Ribbon Grocers. Bethesda took the time to design the entire store to work as a sort of Rube Goldberg machine. There's no enemies in the store, you just follow some arrows directing you to a pressure plate, which causes a number of things to happen, and then a bunch of loot falls from a hole in the ceiling. Fallout 3 is full of fun Easter eggs like this. Gold Ribbon Grocers is sort of a microcosm of the town of Megaton. The bomb is the pressure plate. The game is inviting you to press it to watch the fireworks. And for what it is, that's fine. but it goes against Tim Kane's philosophy of exploring the ethics of a post-nuclear world. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. Imagine if the bomb had been located at Paradise Falls. Then, not only would you get to experience the fireworks of blowing it up, but the ethics behind it wouldn't be so clear-cut black and white. Obsidian might have thought the very same thing, because there is something similar in New Vegas with Cottonwood Cove, and a trailer full of radioactive barrels of toxic waste hanging on a cliff above. Cottonwood Cove is the launching point for Legion raids west of the Colorado River. It is where slaves gathered in these raids are collected before being shipped east. Unleashing the barrels is not as climatic as detonating the megaton bomb, but it causes everyone in Cottonwood Cove to die, Legion and slaves alike. The Legion did something similar to the town of Searchlight, and of course also destroyed the town of Nipton. Many would argue they deserve this. There is a reason and a justification for it, though at the same time it is what might be considered a war crime. There are reasons to either do it or not, and not simply black and white, good or evil, the way that the Megaton quest is designed in Fallout 3. New Vegas showed with Cottonwood Cove that it is possible to both have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. You can have both the itchy and scratchy jackass philosophy of Todd Howard synthesized with the ethics of a post-nuclear world of Tim Kane. Thesis and antithesis.
So, back to Fallout 3, where it's your 10th birthday party and you have to deal with a bully trying to steal your sweet roll.
Oh, great. It truly must be my birthday, because this is everything I've ever wanted in a Fallout game.
And yes, indeed, it's a recurring Bethesda joke dating back to 1994.
And in 1994, the joke might have been funny, but by 1995, it had taken an arrow to the knee.
But how it's handled here is very, very interesting. You see, in both Daggerfall and Morrowind, the same conundrum is asked.
So it wasn't enough that Bethesda recycled ideas and elements from the previous Fallouts, such as the Gek from Fallout 2. No, they also had to reuse elements from a completely different franchise as well. And let's not forget that Liberty Prime is a blatant ripoff from Transformers, or the synths being obvious ripoffs of the androids in Blade Runner and the Terminator films. More recently, we've seen Bethesda even rip off their own modding community when it came to a quest in Far Harbor, which was an obvious example of plagiarism from the Autumn Leaves mod. It seems like Bethesda really struggles when it comes to new ideas. Even the Sweet Roll meme dates to 1994, as you said. It came from a time when Todd Howard was little more than the coffee boy at the studio, and Emil and Pete Hines didn't even work there at all. So whoever came up with this Sweet Roll joke, lame and outdated as it may be, was someone other than the current heads of the studio. The Elder Scrolls franchise is not something Todd or Emil created, but something they inherited. The original creators of that franchise are either no longer working at the company or are marginalized now, and Fallout is something Bethesda bought from another company entirely. Why did Bethesda buy Fallout when they could have just made their own post-apocalyptic franchise themselves? They could have called it the Elder Ghouls or whatever. Perhaps they couldn't have made their own franchise because they lack the creativity to do anything original. Everything they do is a reuse from franchises they own, which others have made in the past, or ripped off from their own modding community, or copied from other franchises like the Synths and Liberty Prime. Starfield is the first new franchise Bethesda has introduced in like 20 years, or however long it's been, and I say new, but odds are it's going to be full of blatant rip-offs from Mass Effect and other existing franchises in that setting. Perhaps also Obsidian's The Outer Worlds, since that's been out for plenty enough time for Bethesda to start copying and pasting from it. But we shall see. This is going to be the ultimate test of whether Todd Howard is actually God Howard, as his fans claim he is. This is the first franchise he has made himself rather than inheriting from others. We will see how much copying he has done from other works. My guess is Starfield is going to be Oblivion in space.
How to deal with bullies stealing your sweet roll.
Who cares? The sweet roll is of no consequence to anything whatsoever. How you handle things with Butch has zero impact on your relationship with him later on in the tutorial. When it skips ahead 6 years later, you can see Butch is still a bully no matter what action you made in the birthday scene. Like I said previously, what the tutorial shows us about what the devs thought the core gameplay elements are is an illusion of choice. H-Bomb described it as being too free and having no choices. No matter what you did, whether you spat on it, threw it on the floor, fought Butch, or even handed it over to him, none of it has any impact on anything. Since it has no impact on anything, it was a waste of time for Bethesda to put it into the game. It is also a waste of the player's time, and that's why the tutorial is so unpopular, and the most popular Fallout 3 mods are ones which mod the opening out. The only reason Bethesda included it is because they wanted to make a joke, but this joke is about as funny as the 2016 Ghostbusters film.
But option 1 is missing. You can't punch Butch. Violence is not an option yet.
No one is saying that violence shouldn't be an option, just that it should not be the only option. You seem to have completely missed the point regarding criticism about not being able to talk down the vault guards during the escape. People aren't saying there should only be a pacifist solution or only a violent solution. Both should be on the table. Being locked out of violence in certain parts of the game doesn't make up for being locked into violence at other times. But if it had to be only one or the other, shouldn't violence be the thing that is always allowed? After all, that is what Todd Howard said is funny, after all. So, wouldn't it have been funny if there had been an option to shove that sweet roll into Butch's badly animated face?
Fallout 1 puts you straight in a cave of rats. No discussions, no skill checks, no alternatives, just kill the rats or run past the rats if you don't feel like killing the rats.
You realize there's a difference between rats and human beings, right? I already explained this with the rad roaches, and so did H-Bomb. Fallout 2 has a temple tutorial which has you fight ants and scorpions. That tutorial is not very well liked because, for one thing, it is mandatory and unskippable, just like Fallout 3's is, and also because your only combat options are melee, or unarmed, I suppose. So yes, indeed, if you built your character around anything other than melee, then you will struggle. I'm not going to defend the Fallout 2 tutorial. I think forced tutorials in general are a really bad idea. But one thing which does make it infinitely better than Fallout 3's tutorial is that the one hostile human you do encounter at the end can be talked to and resolved without violence. It's not reasonable to expect animals like rats or insects to be talked to, but could we at least be able to talk to a human being, especially one that is a member of our tribe or our vault?
New Vegas, meanwhile, started you off with the gecko hunt.
Liar. New Vegas starts you off with a bullet to the head. You wake up inside of Doc Mitchell's house, pick your stats. You do this in a thematically appropriate Vitomatic Vigor Tester machine, as opposed to a baby book in Fallout 3. Both the Vigor Tester and the baby book do the same thing, but the Vigor Tester at least treats the player like an adult, which presumably they ought to be, considering that it is an M-rated game. Then Doc Mitchell does a personality examination, which is equivalent to the GOAT test in Fallout 3. And after that, Doc Mitchell gives you back your stuff, and you are free to leave and do whatever you want. Whether it's hunt down Benny, or ignore him and complete the game without ever interacting with him in any way. Because unlike James in Fallout 3, hunting down Benny is not required for completion of the game. Before you step out the door, Doc Mitchell advises you to meet Sunny Smiles at the saloon, because she will help you learn how to survive in the desert. But the important thing to remember is that Sunny Smiles' tutorial is 100% completely optional. And even if you do choose to accept the tutorial, you have an option to end it right after shooting the bottles. Shooting bottles isn't combat or violence. It is fucking bottles, and you don't even have to do that much anyway. But if you do, you can still choose to end it right then and there. The part about hunting geckos is an optional part of the tutorial which you can either do or do not. And here's the thing, if you do help with the gecko hunt, you will come across a Good Spring settler being attacked at the water source. Kinda like the whole thing with Officer Kendall in Vault 101, right? Well, no. You see, if you intervene and save her life, she rewards you with 3 bottles of purified water, and your reputation with the town of Good Springs improves. Compare and contrast that with the Vault 101 security guards. If you intervene and save their life, they still want to kill you anyway, no matter what. There is nothing you can do that will ever make them back down. Even saving their life doesn't mean a goddamn thing to them. So don't try to pull this crap that the New Vegas tutorial is as bad as the Fallout 3 tutorial. They are nothing at all alike, and you are a goddamn liar. In your Reddit post about Creetosis, you say he called you an idiot, but he only said you acted like an idiot. If you actually believe the bullshit you say, then you would be an idiot. But the thing is, you know better. I know for a fact that you know full well that the New Vegas tutorial is optional, because even before you made your Fallout 3 is better than you think video, you had done a Lonesome Road level 1 challenge series where you made a beeline to the canyon wreckage at level 1. You didn't do the optional Sunny Smiles tutorial first, so I know for a fact that you know this tutorial is optional. You are lying through your teeth by claiming otherwise. And you are lying even further by trying to compare shooting bottles or even geckos to shooting human beings, as if these things were even remotely comparable from an ethical standpoint. You also lie and say that the objective of Act 1 is to kill Benny when it's possible to complete the game without ever encountering him at all. And you also lie and say it's impossible to get past the Cazadors north of Good Springs at level 1. Well, maybe you can't. But that says more about your inability to work out the problem solving in order to do it than it says about New Vegas. And because you can't work out this problem solving and you claim it is impossible, that makes me believe your series, where you supposedly never died, is complete and utter horse shit. There are so many jump cuts in your videos. I believe in reality you died numerous times, but just simply edited them out, and then lied to your viewers and say that you never died. But what aren't you showing behind those jump cuts, MATN? I understand needing to edit for brevity, but the fact that you claim going north of Good Springs is impossible makes me doubt your story. Creetosis didn't call you an idiot. He said you acted like one. And for the record, I'm also not calling you an idiot. I'm calling you a liar.